Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and welcome to the Biweekly Playdate, where I talk about the games that have come out over the past 2 weeks on the Playdate itself. For those of you who don't know, the Playdate is a handheld console by a publisher called Panic, and they published Untitled Goose Game and Firewatch. And apparently someone just had the idea of, hey, let's make a handheld console the size and color of a slice of cheese, and let's give it a crank on the side so that people can turn it like a bloody fishing rod. And let's make it so that people get 2 free games the day they take it out of the box, and then every week they'll get 2 new games loaded onto it in order for them to have fun over the course of 3 months. I loved this idea, and they actually got a bunch of big name developers on a big name by big name independent developers like Bennett Foddy and the guy who made Katamari Damacy and what have you, and they've all had a hand in making games for this thing. So, every 2 weeks, we're going to be taking a look at the games that have come out on it, and I'm going to be going through 4 games per video, and in this case we'll be taking a look at the games that came with the Playdate itself, and then we'll be taking a look at the games that came out the week afterwards. We're also going to be taking a look at 2 pieces of homebrew, because they released development tools for this thing, not only to the public, but to a bunch of developers who said they were interested well before. So a lot of homebrew has actually been coming out for the Playdate over the course of the last few months, and I just want to highlight some of the more interesting ones that have turned up on the Playdate that you don't really get anywhere else. As for the reason that this is bi-weekly, as said in the title, and not weekly, because it's mainly just because I don't have the time to do this every week, but I have the time to make this happen every 2 weeks, and I'd like to think that the videos will come out better for it, so I'd rather do it on that sort of schedule. We'll be alternating between Blue Boards episodes and bi-weekly Playdate episodes in order to keep things a little bit more interesting around here. And just FYI, before I actually get into the gameplay, the way that you actually get footage off of a Playdate is via connecting it via a mirror app, but the video is actually processed on the side of the Playdate itself, which can cause performance issues in the games in question. It won't be too bad, but it'll probably be noticeable if you're looking out for it, so that's just a little warning for you. With that said, let's get into the first game. The first game that came on the Playdate itself is Whitewater Wipeout, which is an interesting little concept. It's based off the surfing minigame from California Games, but of course, since the Playdate has a crank on the side of it, you actually use the crank in order to control the surfer, and you use this to go up and down the wave, get some speed, and get into the air to do some spins and maybe a trick or 2. And it plays really well. It is a lot of fun to control once you've got the hang of how the crank is supposed to work. It is just really smooth, and it's a lot of fun trying to keep your speed up as much as possible to avoid the oncoming wave, get as high as you possibly can, spin the crap out of the crank in order to earn as many points as possible. The only real downside being that, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, it does kind of lose its luster after the first few minutes. You don't want to play it for very long at all, just because the gameplay doesn't have that much more to it outside of just, hey, just crank it as much as you can in order to get as many spins in the air as possible. This doesn't hurt the game per se, but it does limit its replay value over the course of many short sessions. So I find myself thinking that, oh, I'll come back to it later, and I end up coming back to it in like a week, playing it for 5 minutes and then putting it down again. It's not a bad game, but I just wish there was a little bit more to it, that's all. The second game we'll be taking a look at is Casual Birder, which is an adventure game set in this town that is absolutely obsessed with birds. To the point where gangs will start popping up in order to prevent people from going around and taking pictures of birds. This is incredibly unusual, but it makes up for it with a really neat sense of humor. Whether it be the way that all of the characters in the town talk to you and how they all end up being interesting despite the fact that they're all absolute nutcases at the best of times. It's also made up for in the fact that it's just got a lot of little clever things going on, like the way that you solve certain puzzles, or the fact that you get these cameras that do things like let you see in the dark, or even the things like being able to use the focus to like zoom, not so much zoom in and out, but focus in and out, and it actually reacts the way you expect it to. Like stuff up at the top of the screen will be in focus while stuff at the bottom of the screen will be out of focus. And it can actually be quite a challenge trying to tilt the focus using the crank in order to actually get a photo of a bird while it's moving. It does a couple of neat little things like that, and it's got a fair amount of birds to go around and photograph. It's got a fair amount of characters with a fair amount of puzzles and a pretty big area to explore. My one issue with it though is that there's one point in the game where you have to go and get like almost every bird in the game on camera, and it can be really hard to tell what you've taken pictures of and what you haven't taken pictures of just looking at it, because it's a small screen with small birds on it, and it can be hard to tell if you've actually shot something or not purely based on memory. But otherwise, this is just a neat little experience, and I actually appreciated this a lot more than I expected to, and that's always a nice surprise. Our third game, our first game of week 2, and arguably my favourite game of this fortnight, and therefore my favourite official game from the Playdate so far, is Crankin's Time Travel Adventure, although it's presented here as Crankin Presents Time Travel Adventure. And it's a very unusual concept in which if Crankin doesn't hurry to get to his date will eventually kick him in the balls. No, this is actually something that happens. You'll see it in this video. However, you do this in a very unique way, and it's something that I really enjoy about the Crank on the Playdate, because you can always find yourself using it in some really neat ways. And in this game, you use it to control Crankin on a very linear path, which usually involves bending down to sniff the flowers, sitting at a table to have a cup of tea, and then jumping over the top of it. Going into a house in order to just dive roll his way out the window. And these are placed along with some very specific obstacles, whether they be like butterflies that do the Castlevania Medusa Head S pattern, whether it be pigs going on a stampede, or literal pieces of shit wandering along the ground that you have to avoid by very precisely using the crank to tune your animations to dodge them using the obstacles that are in your path. And it has a lot of these obstacles and a lot of unique ways to use them. And while each one of these levels ends up being like a one and you're done thing, because once you've done the level once, you know how to do it again every single time, although there is a bonus if you manage to clear them all fast enough, in that it just gives you a fancy little icon on the screen, although I haven't actually finished the game yet to know that there's like a super bonus for getting it all done under in that time. And it's not like it's a game where you can just wait around for all of the obstacles to go past you, because if you get there by something like 4 PM, you will just miss your date completely and you'll have to redo the level. So you have to figure out the fastest way through all of these different obstacles and enemies, and it just creates a really interesting little puzzle and a really interesting little reflex exercise. Whether it be something as simple as running the crank really fast in order to get ahead of a stampede of pigs, all the way down to, okay, I need to hold a very precise crank pattern on this up and down set of hills in order to get through all of these. Then I need to be halfway over the top of this hurdle so that this pig that's running by doesn't run me down. And then I need to sit and drink some tea and wait for the exact moment for my head to bed down so this butterfly will go straight over my head, and then I can go for the goal. And I find it just really satisfying to find out the solutions to these puzzles, and they're never anything too difficult or over the top in order to actually solve. So I give Crankin 2 thumbs up on this one. It's a really creative little puzzle, and it feels like a perfect use of the Playdate's capabilities. Huh?
What
Our final game for this bi-weekly playdate is, honestly, I hesitate to call it a game. It's Boogie Loops, and it's basically just a fancy tracker. You've got dance moves up the top, a keyboard in the middle, and a drum machine down the bottom, and you use the three to create a little bit of a fancy disco show with different creatures, although one of them ends up being an anthropomorphic pizza. That's very unusual, and I don't really know how I feel about this one, to be perfectly honest with you. I was never that big of a fan of these sorts of tracking things anyway, and this one is just a little bit simple, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. It's kind of neat to watch the animals dance, and the synthesizer, or the tracker itself, isn't bad. It is neat to make all of these different little tunes and whatnot, but honestly, I played around with this one for 5 minutes and got bored, so that's pretty much the end of that for me. I will probably not be coming back to this one. Our first homebrew this time around is going to be Playnote Studio, which is an implementation of Flipnote Studio, just for viewing the animations though, back from the DS days. And it's a really interesting little implementation too, mainly because the screen on the Playdate is absolutely perfect for these sorts of animations. It's kind of hard to portray in this video, but I've actually taken some video of my Playdate screen actually playing an animation from this one, and it just looks amazing. And not to mention the implementation is really well done too. You can change the dithering of some of the colors, turn off the sound effects, use the crank in order to go frame by frame and have a look for yourself. And even add in your own if you can find somewhere to go download them. I couldn't. I didn't even really know where to start. It's hard to know where to go looking for something like this, but thankfully they include 24 of them in the application itself that you can have a look at in order to demonstrate just how good of an idea that this thing is. And I've actually included a little bit of a video here of one of these animations running on the Playdate itself, but taken from my phone camera, so that you can actually see how good it looks on screen. It's just a really nice little thing, and I'm just genuinely impressed with how good it looks. So, yeah, thumbs up for this. And the last game of this bi-weekly playdate is going to be Super Corporate Tax Avoider. Because Super Corporate Tax Avoider is absolutely insane. So the idea is that you are working in the back room of a business trying to shred documents before the lawyer sees you doing it and arrests you for tax evasion. And it actually does it in a really interesting way, because the Playdate can detect when the crank is left inside the holder in the side of the Playdate. So the idea is that you pull the crank out and turn it to shred documents, but when you need to hide it, you pop it back in, and when it pops back in, the game will detect it and hide the paper shredder. It's a really cute little idea, and it's helped out by just the atmosphere of everything. The lawyer and the boss just having this discussion outside, and you needing to just detect when the lawyer is going to come busting in, because he is a really insistent little bastard. You need to be on watch for him at all times. And they often have the weirdest discussions outside, so you're paying attention to these discussions and having a bit of a chuckle and wondering, wait, does this line mean he's about to pop in and just bust my ass for tax evasion? And so it creates a really neat little concept for a game, and I enjoy like every minute that I play of this just because it's so silly. And he's been updating it over the past couple of weeks as well. I actually got this as one of the first games I played on my Playdate, and the English wasn't very good, but it got tuned up a lot over the course of the couple of weeks that it took to get the first update out. So yeah, I like it a lot. I actually really approve of this, like, strange little concept. It is surprisingly fun to play. It's got the atmosphere going for it, and it even looks pretty decent, even though it looks like a mess, but to be fair, that's kind of the theme they're trying to give off here. So, yeah, that's it for the bi-weekly playdate. I'll see you in 2 weeks with 4 more official releases and 2 more homebrew games. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.